So the fitting room is looking to solve some of fashion industry's biggest problems, such as online returns, reproductions, and a terrible shopping experience for the consumer. The online returns are as high as 50% for women's wear garments and 30% for men's wear garments, and overproduction is at a stunning 40%, where 40% of everything made is actually never purchased. And I think both you, myself, and every single other online shop will agree that the online shopping experience is fairly broken. What our solution enables you to do is to create a really accurate 3D avatar of yourself with just your smartphone.
All right, so welcome to Backers Live. I'm Justin Fox, founder and CEO of Backers. Here I have Kirill Moiseyev. Hopefully I said that. I'm hopefully getting better and better. The founder and CEO of The Fitting Room. Kirill, thank you for joining me.
Nice to be here, Justin. How's it going?
Good. All right, so let's dive right in. So The
Okay.
Fitting Room is currently raising capital on the Backers funding portal.
Mhm.
You currently have your offering there live. It's been live for a couple of weeks now. Let's dive into what should people know. If you had a quick elevator pitch, what should people know about The Fitting Room? What is The Fitting Room? Why is it important? And why should somebody invest in The Fitting Room?
Absolutely. So the fitting room is looking to solve some of fashion industry's biggest problems, such as online returns, reproductions, and a terrible shopping experience for the consumer. The online returns are as high as 50% for women's wear garments and 30% for men's wear garments, and overproduction is at a stunning 40%, where 40% of everything made is actually never purchased. And I think both you, myself, and every single other online shop will agree that the online shopping experience is fairly broken. What our solution enables you to do is to create a really accurate 3D avatar of yourself with just your smartphone. You can download the app on iOS and on Android, and then you're able to use this avatar to improve your online shopping experience. The first product that we're launching with right now as we speak is a really accurate size recommendation system where we actually compare your body measurements to the dimension of the garment to enable you to know what is the right size. The next product they'll be launching later in the year is actually going to enable you to fully try on a garment on your virtual avatar and see what it's going to look like. And our long-term vision, which will probably launch closer to the end of the year or early next year, is our long-term North Star vision where you can actually try on a custom fit garment on your body before it's ever made. Now, the reason why you should invest now and some of the important things to know is that we've already de-risked a lot of the technology. So you're coming in at a prime time as we're launching, as we have a bunch of customers lined up to go live with us. So this is the most opportune time where you're getting arguably one of the best possible valuations for the most de-risk kind of point that we'll ever have.
So still early stage, priced well, but de-risked potentially for that high risk high reward is kind of like low risk high reward potentially, right? Is that if you kind of put it for
Lower
sure.
risk, but
Right.
still a really high reward, which,
Yeah.
in 2 to 3 months will be a very different story as we onboard a few of these brands.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely check them out. Obviously, they're on the Backers funding portal. You can go to backers.ca or you can go to portal.backers.ca. Check out the fitting room there, among other offerings. So let's talk a little bit about Kirill. Tell us a little bit about your background. Actually, interesting story. Why don't you tell people what you're going through right now as sort of, I mean, it is what it is, but the journey of an entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about what you're dealing with right now.
Um, are you
Oh,
referring to like,
physically. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I have
yeah.
I, I have a torn Achilles right
Right.
now. I just got surgery,
Yeah.
but fortunately, that doesn't stop us from moving forward.
Uh,
So working, if anything, more hours than I was before the injury.
right. You're
Can't go
basically
out.
in
I
front of
can't
your
work
desk.
out.
You can't go
Yeah,
anywhere, can't do anything but
so,
put time and effort into this, right? So
exactly.
so obviously speedy recovery there. You said what, it's been about a month since the surgery, right? So
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
just about, yeah, perfect. So, well, tell us a little bit about Kirill, though. I was sort of joking about obviously the surgery, but tell us a little bit about, and it's no joke. Obviously, you're sort of immobile for a bit, but tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from. What obviously a lot of people look to invest in the founder, right? That's the person that they're looking, to see the vision through, from its infancy to, kind of the end result, what the exit, obviously, whether it's public. And we can talk a little bit about what the exit strategies are. But tell us a little bit about Kirill and your background.
For sure. So right in university, I ended up taking this class that really put me on a path towards entrepreneurship. It was ran by Rejo Shatsu. He's actually the founder of the Next program here in Toronto. Is arguably the first accelerator. I was the last class that he taught, but he
Okay.
was definitely very inspirational and put me on this path. And the first business plan that I wrote for that class became my first business.
Okay.
And it was a kind of great first experience to dip my toe into the water. We kind of did find some product market fit, but there was some unexpected kind of government regulation that kind of made things go sideways, but nonetheless, it was an incredible learning experience. I did a couple of other projects afterwards. The one kind of that was most notable that helped me come up with this idea was a virtual reality arcade, where I was able to actually see how consumers interact in the virtual worlds with, technology and so forth. And this gave me an idea. What if you could virtually try on garments? And that was sort of the first little Kindle that got the fitting room going. But the fitting room story, which I can share, a really good one. So maybe I'll share that. So my story here started about 4 years ago. I was trying to buy a pair of straight black jeans. So I went to the Eaton Center, Toronto's biggest downtown mall. I'd walk around, and I could find skinny black jeans, super skinny black jeans, tapered black jeans, but not a single pair that was just black and straight. So end up leaving the mall, 4 hours later without making a purchase and being like, man, there has to be a way to shop. I can't believe I just went there for 4 hours and came out with nothing. Too bad that you can't shop online and actually trust that something is going to fit you. So this was kind of the beginning of the journey. There's more of it, but just for the sake of time, well, maybe
Yeah.
I'll give you a short version today and maybe a longer
The
version
Coles
of
notes.
the longer version as well. There's also a part where I discovered custom fit clothing in Hoyan. That's an exciting one too.
Okay. We can get into that. We've got some time maybe
Okay.
afterwards. But well,
Okay.
I mean, get into whatever you want to get into for sure.
Okay. So yeah. So once that was kind of like the second moment in my life where I was like, something like this needs to exist. And then I was a few months later, I was traveling out Southeast Asia, and I made a little pit stop at a small town in Vietnam called Hoi An. It's almost exactly halfway between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. This now town is really known for an amazing cuisine. It also has all these beautiful canals, but it's also really known for its custom fit tailoring. So on my last day there, I get caught up by the hype and I go to a few of these places. And I remember going to the first one, picking out some fabric, and them asking to come back only an hour and a half later. So I came back an hour and a half later, I put on the shirt, and it fits me like an absolute glove.
Mhm.
And that's when the wheels start turning. Immediately, I'm like, okay, this shirt is only $30. And if you had shipping duty markup, there's clearly a business opportunity. All I have to do is take this experience and find a way to put it online. Now, coming from a VR background, that's why that was relevant. I immediately started thinking, can you create a really accurate 3D avatar of somebody with just their smartphone? If so, we'd be able to pull up the body measurements, send it to a place like this, and bam, we're in business. And I'm super excited, and I'm walking over the second store to pick up the second shirt. But when I come in to pick up the second shirt, I put it on, and it doesn't fit.
Mm.
They remake it, doesn't fit. They remake it again, and it still did not fit. So then I was like, okay, what went wrong with the first store, which was the most amazing shopping experience of my life, and the second store, which is a complete and utter disaster? And what I realized that had a lot to do with the fabrication. The fabric in the first store that I picked was made out of your traditional cotton. It was going to drape a very predictable way. In the second store, I picked out a fabric that was a lot more silk-like. It was very, very soft and very drapey, and that's why I picked it. But the human pattern maker could not account for these fabric differences when making the cut, and he never was able to make the shirt right. So I realized that if I actually wanted to bring this to the masses, I had to be able to come up with some kind of algorithm that took the human error out of the equation and also was able to account for the fabric properties. Lastly, I was also traveling with my girlfriend at the time and walked into a store for her as well. And when we did, they gave her a book this thick of magazine cutouts, and they said we can make anything you want for you. So she
Okay.
starts flipping through this thing, becomes like a deer in the headlights, complete choice paralysis, cannot pick any. And I'm
Mm.
like, babe, what's wrong? And she's like, I don't know how it's going to fit on me. I'm like, what do you mean it's custom? Of course it's going to fit. She's like, no, it might fit me in the shoulders, but how's it going to be on my waist, around my hips, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what made me realize that for a person to have a really good shopping experience online, they really have to see the garment on them, even if it's custom made. So that's why the whole vision came together. You allow the customer to create a really accurate 3D avatar of themselves with just their smartphone. They can go on our brand's websites, start shopping. Of course, first we were launching with a size recommendation solution, but shortly later they'll be able to actually try on the garment. The first iteration is try on a regular garment that's size like a small, a medium, or large. But a long-term vision is to also enable the customer to try on a custom fit garment before it's ever made. So that's the genesis of the fitting room.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, yeah, it's sort of that iteration from, taking off the rack and pairing it with your size to eventually being able to have that fully customized, solution where it's, made to order essentially, right? To the
Correct.
specs of the consumer, which obviously, we've talked about this in other conversations, would obviously take some effort from the brands, if you will, to have that facility. But based on what you've discussed, if their cost savings on returns and other aspects of the business were significantly reduced, that added cost for that customization would more than be covered. Correct? Is that, if I were to, or at
Yeah,
least
exactly.
that's the thought
Exactly.
process.
Yeah, so to dive a little bit more detail on that, so everybody always recognizes that custom fit production is more expensive.
Right.
That's a given. As a matter of fact, it's about 43% more expensive when it comes to apparel products. However, when you look at the fashion industry, right now it's suffering from about a 40% overproduction problem where 40% of everything made is never purchased. If you do made to order, that's completely eliminated. And if you're making things custom, you're going to have a very, very low return rate. We're talking about maybe 5 to 10%. So when you actually run those numbers for any brands that are sort of the 80 US dollar point and above, think like a brand that's a little bit more expensive, like Aritzia. We ran the numbers and we believe that even a brand of that size could actually produce the products custom, sell them for the same price, yet be able to make the same amount or more money for themselves while also providing a better experience for the consumer. And
Right.
not the least of that is also they actually target the entirety of the human body spectrum. Right now, if a woman buys from a brand that she's never bought from before, there's about a 50% chance that she's going to return the item, even if she buys two sizes, because chances are that she's in between the two sizes. When you're
Right.
producing things custom, you're never going to have that problem.
Right. So that, I mean, that's kind of an interesting, I mean, a stat where it's like they could literally charge the same price, provide a better service, provide custom fitted products or clothing,
Mm-hmm.
apparel, have obviously better customer experience, make more money,
Mm-hmm.
potentially better profit margins, potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all for the same price, right? And that's, so the end result is sort of the brand wins and the obviously the consumer wins, and
Correct.
there's less waste, which I think let's lead into the next sort of I think interesting part around the fitting room and sort of some of the things you discuss is the fact that there is so much waste in the apparel industry. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world behind oil, accounting for 10% of all global emissions. The worst part about this number is, though, is that 40% is completely avoidable. 40% of all garments made are never purchased, and 84% of those are incinerated or landfilled. It is literally a crime. The second kind of biggest compounding factor there on the environmental side is the high online returns, which for the average women's brands is as high as about 50%. Men's brands is about 30%. And, from an operational point of view as well, these two make up about 30 to 40% of top line revenue for your average brand. But if you think about it, so all the global emissions for apparel are about 10%. If we can just eliminate the overproduction, if we get the brands to stop mass producing and only produce what consumers want, we could theoretically one day, obviously this would take a long time, but one day we could potentially eliminate as much as 4% of all global emissions by simply making sure that brands don't produce things that are not purchased.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, that's I this is not a, I don't know if you know the stats, but like what are, you said 4%. That seems like a big number in the grand scheme
That
of,
is a
you
massive
know,
number. To
right?
put it in
What
perspective,
are comparatively, what would be
the
something else?
entire,
Yeah.
how people talk about methane gas is a terrible
Right. So
polluter.
cows
The,
and farming and stuff like that.
the entirety of methane gas is 1.6%.
So this is like three times what, that problem that people discuss on the news and is kind of, top of
Exactly.
mind in everyone. But this is
And, and
something
and
even
in my
larger.
exactly, and in my opinion, this is one of the lowest hanging fruit. I mean, a lot of VCs right now are investing into like sustainable materials, which is great, but you still have to produce those materials, and there's still costs associated with this. Here, we're talking about just eliminating things that you don't buy,
Right.
and then let's on top of that also do sustainable materials. But let's first eliminate the things
The
that are not
unnecessary
purchased.
production. Yeah. So okay, let's and I mean we've had some conversations, but let's talk a little bit about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. why are brands opposed to, I mean, I get, okay, we understand why they do it because obviously they need to have the product in stores in wherever and fulfill the demand, right? So it's kind of like a lose-lose in that scenario. If they were to decrease their production, they in potential really would lose out on some of the sales, right? So that's kind of their perspective right now. Outside of the custom fitting, like, is that the only reason why someone wouldn't look at something like this, or what is their, like, what's the hang up? Are there other people that have attempted this? Maybe I'm wondering, like, where, like, are you pushing completely new ground, new barriers that didn't exist, 3, 5, 10 years ago because of technology, or like what is kind of the holdup, I guess?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. One is definitely inertia. So this is kind of how it's been done in the industry for a very long time, especially until more recently, it's been a lot more difficult for them, to track things like, even body shapes. For example, right now, most of the brands are not working with very good body shape information to be able to even make the sizes in the first place. But even when you do, you can only make so many sizes. And
Right,
then people are going to be in between those sizes, right? So you're never going to be able to satisfy the entirety of the population. But right now was the mass production model where they're having to produce a lot more in certain areas to get those unit economics. So they're getting a very, very low price per item right now. Instead, though, it's a little bit harder to people to think that, okay, I could be paying more per unit, but because I don't have these other extra costs down the line, like right now, until at the end of the year, these operational costs of returns, the operational cost of overproduction, they're not fully quantifiable. It's a lot easier to quantify, okay, I paid this much for the shirt and this is
right.
how much it
The
costs.
upfront
But
cost, yeah.
the upfront cost. So what happens right now is that all the brands or these large brands are trying to get the lowest possible unit per item. But
Right,
then they're not really doing the math, or at least it's a different department that's supposed to do the math on these operational inefficiencies. But if you actually look at the whole picture, you're actually better off producing less at a higher price point, and but not having all this waste. And of course, there's a balance there. Like I said, right now this model we've priced it out. It works for any brand that are like $80 or above. So imagine like a cami or a dress shirt for starting at $80. But because the production has to be overseas. But for any brands at that price point, we can show the math, we can run the math. It's actually better to do it this way. But it's, when you have inertia, when you're a really large brand and you are doing used to doing things the way that you are, it's a big ask. So the way that we kind of see it is that initially we'll be launching this product once it's ready with smaller brands. And one of the things that
right,
smaller brands are doing already is they're already doing made to order production. A lot of them are doing something called drops, where they'll produce a bunch of clothing over like a 4 week period and they'll ship it out to all their customers. And they'll do that again. Take orders for 4 weeks, make it, ship it out. So they have very, very low overproduction. But since they're already making made to order, why not make made to order and custom? Because right now they're doing made
right,
to order sizing. For them to switch over to do made to order and custom is a no brainer. So what we're going to do is we're going to first kind of focus on brands of that size, get them adopting this type of technology, create a bunch of case studies, and then eventually we'll go to our current customers that are using our virtual try-on product, for example, and say, like, look, we've already brought you so much value with our virtual try-on product by helping you reduce online returns and increasing conversions. We believe that you should try to doing a pilot for the custom product as well. Let us show you some case studies of how it's been successful with some of the smaller brands. And that's sort of our strategy, is initially focusing with our first offering and second offering the larger players. And then the third offering, the custom fit, will initially be with some of the smaller brands.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, you touched on kind of in the intro there, maybe reiterate, the market, the volume. I know you and I did sort of backwards math on a offline call where I got to the same number that you had kind of gotten to. Talk a little bit about, what I guess the industry overall sort of value or opportunity is,
Mhm.
sort of the TAM, if you will.
Yep.
And kind of where you see sort of the fitting room fitting in to that in that room, if you will.
Absolutely. So, the apparel market is absolutely huge. There are over 38,000 brands globally, which make up a $1.8 trillion total addressable market. Now, when we think about this type of technology and the value that it could bring to the fashion brands, We believe that fashion brands would be willing to pay globally around $64 billion a year for this type of technology. So with that in mind, we think that the addressable market that the fitting room is going after is 64 billion, which is, extremely, extremely large. And from everything that we've seen so far is that there's not a great deal of brands working on this type of technology for the size of the market that it is.
Right.
There's a handful of companies that are doing something like this. But one thing that I want reviewers to do is go check out the technology and compare it. This has been a very, very, very difficult technology to build, which is why so far you haven't really seen a lot of it in the market. And there's only, I would say, 4 or 5 other companies that we're keeping a close eye on. And even there, I think we do have a technological edge on most of our components, even when it comes to those players.
So there's nothing, just let's reiterate, there's nothing in the market that sort of even sort of resembles something like this. Is that, and then you're part of
That's
a core group of a few companies that are kind of pushing the boundary.
Yeah, so a couple of those players out of those 5 are recently in the market, but once again, they're very very much so the nascent stages. So there's not like an incumbent that everybody knows
Right,
about
right,
that's able to say that, oh, we have this technology, works perfectly. There's a few of us that are working on the bleeding edge, but we're kind of all in a similar space right now in terms
right.
of stage. But we're very excited. I'm sure those other players are also very excited to bring this technology to the people.
So in essence, this is, I mean, all the rages around the Apple Vision, sort of AR, VR kind of headset type of thing. This is in essence another application of sort of AR, VR technology, right? In an indirect way. Correct? So I mean,
I mean, if you wanted to get really, really granular and technical,
or AI, right? Or yeah,
there's separations, but from
yeah,
a holistic point of view, you
right.
could put them all into one bucket. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean the popularity of the Apple Vision, obviously people are starting to understand. I mean, one of the things I said probably 5, 8 years ago was VR to me is sort of one thing. You've got virtual reality, so VR. I
Mhm.
think AR is what is going to be and that's where Apple Vision now has come out with arguably this augmented reality where you've got reality and then you've got the overlay of different aspects onto
Mhm.
it. Totally different topic. Maybe we can have that conversation another time.
Yeah.
Obviously you coming from the VR space, would love to hear your thoughts. I guess, I mean, give your thoughts. Why don't we do that right now? What are your thoughts on Apple Vision? A little side quest here. What are your thoughts on Apple Vision and kind of AR, VR in the world right now, given your background?
So I think there are very distinct use cases for both. Um, Depending on what it is. So I think like VR is really incredible, like where you do like training for simulation when you need complete immersion. So
Right.
like training, firefighters, training medical professionals, a lot of trade, military, police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything where like you need to have complete and utter immersion,
Mm.
and then obviously the AR use case is a place where you don't necessarily need complete immersion, where you want to have access to the environment around you, but at the same time, you'd like be able to do, like Minority Report, for example, where you're moving hands in
Oh,
space and things
yeah.
move around, which you are able to do. I mean, it's in the nascent stages right now still, but you
Yeah.
are kind of able to do
Yeah.
in this virtual world. So I think they are two very unique use cases. I think the use cases for AR are more, there's more of them
Right.
because, like I said, VR is really just gaming and simulation.
Right.
But simulation when you need full immersion, is pretty incredible. So that technology keeps improving and improving and improving, and for the right use case, it's the right technology. So.
Yeah, and I mean the AR side, obviously, and this is where I thought, obviously there are use cases for VR, like you said, any kind of need for immersion. You mentioned training or gaming or things of that nature. But with AR, it allows you to, arguably, people are wearing the Apple Vision out in reality,
Yeah.
interacting with reality as well as to some, I've actually seen people like standing almost like half in the road, doing things. So maybe there needs to be some what kind of warning label on there, but do not use, while driving or, some of those things. But like, at least there's the ability to interact with the real world or reality and have that augmentation of it where, like you said, you can have, overlays of things, the Minority Report example, which is kind of what they're doing, right? They're
Yeah.
pulling up spreadsheets. You've got, I've seen people watching like a screen here, and they've got a ticker here, and they've got something else there, and they're kind of immersed
Yeah.
in reality, right? So kind of interesting. So where I mean, obviously, where can people find you?
Mhm.
We'll end it, and if people have questions, we want to connect with you. Obviously, it's the fittingroom.tech.
Correct. Yeah.
TECH is the website. They can find you on portal.backers.ca. Where else can they find you on socials? What are the social
Yeah.
links where people can find you?
LinkedIn is definitely the best place. I think I'm the only Kirill Moiseev on LinkedIn, or at least as far as I can see. So
Yeah,
it's Kirill, last name Moiseev. I'm sure that I'll be tagged in the post, and
for
feel free
sure.
to email me at Kirill@thefittingroom.tech.
Yeah, perfect. And so reach out, and obviously, people can invest as little as $100. So those that are wondering what, and I'll give sort of the premise of what the backers funding portal is. Essentially, it's companies like the Fitting Room are raising capital. They're a private company raising capital from the general public. So it's a new sort of opportunity for the masses now to be able to invest in early stage companies, and to get in on the ground floor, literally, early stage, like we talked at the very beginning. A very arguably favorable, appealing valuation with some of that de-risked aspect to it. So potentially, if it applies, this could be a potentially a good investment opportunity for the right person. So check it out. So I'm going to end it with this last question. Kirill, what are your thoughts on bringing in the public, if you will, the average individual, the average Joe and Jane and Sue and Steve and Kirill, right? What are your thoughts on their ability to now invest in the fitting room and the whole sort of backers concept? I guess I'll throw that out there as well.
Sure thing. Well, clearly, Justin, since I'm on the platform, obviously I'm a believer that
Appreciate it.
the general public should have the ability to invest into private companies. When you think about the majority of public companies, they actually go down. Once somebody does an IPO, very, very few companies go up from there. If you look at the markets, it's the majority of the really big companies that make up the majority of the market cap are your Apples, your Microsofts, your Googles, and so forth. But if you actually look at it, the majority of companies that go public after the fact, they kind of weather out. So the people that end up making the big upside are the early investors who are often, your VCs and your institutionals who came in at an early stage, made a massive exit when the company exited at an IPO. And then, the retail investor, your everyday investor, doesn't get to have that opportunity to have that massive, 50x, 100x, 1000x. I mean, those are almost unheard of, with very, 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 very few exceptions in the public markets. Obviously, Nvidia did some incredible gains this year, but other than that, but even I don't know if they ever hit 20x. But so hitting a 20x, even a 20x on the public markets is almost impossible. Versus in the private markets, especially if you come into the early stage, like as long as a company doesn't fail, which of course is a high chance of, we gotta call a spade a spade. But as long as a company succeeds, a 20x is an extremely reasonable result. 100x is something that's extremely possible, and even 1000x is in the realm of possibility. So you just are not going to be able to find those kind of multiples in the public market. So if you see something that you believe in the private markets and you'd like to get involved, there's definitely a much larger upside opportunity than you would see in the public markets.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually talking to my wife about something here. So a lot of people come, and this is kind of a conversation around backers, and I appreciate you being on the platform and sort of believing in us, even sort of early days. We've had a couple successful raises, and we're kind of bringing on more and more, early stage companies, and we're giving them the opportunity to raise from the public through our portal. But one of the things that people say, or I've heard feedback is, people want to invest more. That's sort of, especially those that have been able to. So, I mean, for the record, 99.5% of the population probably have been restricted from investing in early stage companies. So even if they wanted to prior to a platform like Backers, it technically was illegal or they weren't able to unless they were immediate friends and family or accredited, which are high net worth individuals, right? Angel investors. So the majority of the population has not even had or hasn't even had this opportunity. But let's just touch on those that have had the opportunity that were accredited and could potentially invest in an opportunity like this. And now everyone can do it. But a lot of the pushback is I want to invest more, right? Or I want to put in larger checks. And a lot of times, even the entrepreneurs are like, I want potentially to get a $150,000 or $100,000 check rather than sort of the 40 $2,500 checks, which is sort of the
Mhm.
cap on where people can invest. But the difference is, and I'll say this from an investor standpoint, the difference is typically when you're putting in those 25,000 or $50,000 checks, that company is much further along. It's more like a seed investment, and they're probably at like a 30 to $50 million valuation versus now, for example, with the fitting room, you guys are at what, a six? What was
Uh,
the
the 13.5.
13.5, right? So that to get to that 50, that alone right there is about a 4x, 5x. So you're 2,500, if you get to 100x or 100 million, that's your 10x. That's like putting 25K into a $100 million company, right? So that's where you're getting in at much more attractive valuations into early stage companies. You don't have to put as much in to get that return, right? To, as you mentioned, on an IPO, like you said, a lot of them IPO at whatever they do, and you see the first 3 months they've lost 20, 30, 40% of their value, right? Because arguably the retail has literally been dumped on, right?
Yeah,
That's
literally.
literally right, and
That's the
that's
term.
that they've
Yeah.
literally been dumped on, right? And people talk about crypto pump and dump and stuff like this, and arguably this is why, and we'll end it with this. I have one more question for you, but the reason I got and started Backers was I saw the opportunity in sort of blockchain and crypto, not currency side, but the asset backed or the tokenization of real world assets, and how you could now have an actual company underlying the value that asset underlying the value of that token. And that's sort of what so now they're not being dumped on with this vaporware. There's actually underlying assets underlying this blockchain technology, and that's maybe a conversation for another time. You and I, maybe we've had it as well. And anyone that wants to understand a little bit about the tokenization of real world assets, I'm going to be starting sort of a series on that and talking a little bit about what you need to know as an investor in that realm. But that's where now you've got early stage opportunities, early stage investments, those run ups, those kind of 10, 100,000x returns that people talk about in sort of cryptocurrency is also available potentially with real companies doing real things in the real world, right? Not to say that cryptocurrencies aren't. Maybe they aren't, maybe they are. I don't know. That's a discussion for another time. But this, to me, in my opinion, this is a much more realistic and safer is an arbitrary word, but better bet, if you will, or better investment than those, in my opinion, right? Because you get somebody that is doing something in the real world. I don't know. Quick thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that? You don't have to get into it. That's kind of off topic a little bit, but that's more the
So,
backer side of things.
no, for sure. So, I mean, the beauty about tokenizing stock to make it more easy to trade, for example, is that it would be more easy to create secondary markets. So right now, when you talk about liquidity events
Liquidity, yeah.
for an early stage startup, you have, of course, your IPO, you have your acquisition, or you have something called a secondary sale. So secondaries usually happen at each different financing round. That's where that opportunity kind of creeps up. But otherwise, that's about it. But what the sort of like tokenization, so to speak, of the stock, what that could enable to do is to create much more easy way to trade secondary markets for the stock. So it's almost like having a publicly traded exchange for the early stage companies,
Yeah.
giving you more immediate liquidity. So I think if the world can go in that direction, that would make it even more enticing for early stage investors, for the public to get into the early stage investment side of
Yeah.
things.
And that's kind of what we're building. And actually, it's interesting that you touched on it because my final question was actually tell us a little bit about the exit strategies for the fitting room and where you see if somebody were to invest in the fitting room, what are some of the, potential ROI? I mean, obviously you can't give any, specifics. You can give roundabout numbers, but I kind of threw out just, if it was 13, it goes to 100, there's a 10x, but like where do you see potential exits if somebody were to invest in the fitting room? What are some ROIs and what are some potential exit strategies or opportunities?
For sure. So, going sort of anti-chronologically, so the longest kind of hold that you'd be able to have is if we decide to fully go to an IPO. An IPO generally takes anywhere from 8 to 10 years on average for a company these days. So that would be kind of like your longest hold. Now, you don't necessarily have to hold the entirety of your stock until that point. There might be opportunities for you to sell a portion of it beforehand or all of it if that's what you're interested in. Of course, the other kind of opportunity would be an acquisition. I would think that with kind of how quickly we're hoping to grow and the impact that our technology can have on the fashion market, I think the most likely sort of acquirers would be companies like Amazon or Shopify or really, really major kind of like multi-billion dollar fashion brand or marketplace. Those are probably some of the other kind of acquisition potentials. And of course, as I mentioned prior to that, the most immediate sort of liquidity would happen at every single financing round.
Right.
As long as we end up delivering and growing quickly, there's going to be more demand at each round of financing, then we'll have supply. And then those other investors that want to get in, the only way they'll be able to get into the business is by buying some stock of the existing shareholders. And then, of course, if you invested in us through the Backers platform, you will suddenly have the opportunity to divest, a portion of your stock and get some immediate liquidity and, do other wonderful things with it. So, of course, we're all in this for the long haul,
Right.
but I understand that obviously, you might want to sell off, 5% at some point just to get some immediate liquidity or whatever it may be, whatever your life needs are to and there will be those opportunities for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, just to touch on that further, it's an interesting point. A lot of people ask, is the IPO the only exit strategy? I mean, that is one. And like you said, sort of that 7 to 10 year time horizon, right? So it's a much longer hold. But there are things like an acquisition where if you are bought out, but I like the interesting point that you brought up there around every round of financing, if you're oversold. So if you're offering X dollars and your demand is 1.2, of what you have, that 20% there needs to potentially find that investment somewhere. And so that opens up the opportunity for potentially, say, existing investors to, if again, if as you stated, if their life needs require them to have the cash rather than the equity, they have that option to liquidate their assets at that point or a portion thereof, right? It doesn't, and they're not forced to, at least in that scenario, to liquidate. So Kirill, appreciate you joining me. Obviously, everyone check out Kirill and the fitting room on the backers funding portal. Check them out on the website, thefittingroom.tech. They can start using the website, right? And they can start using it now. It's live, or at least the
Yeah,
initial version is live.
so we're launching with our first brand momentarily.
Right,
We just pushed both apps to the App Store for the public to be able to download without a special download link.
right.
So as of early next week, you'll be able to go to the App Store and download the app, create the avatar, and then
Perfect.
right now we have a demo site set up with our kind of like a few test assets that you can go play around with, and then very shortly, hopefully by the end of next week or definitely the week after, we'll be live with our first paying customer.
Awesome. That's so if you're catching them now, within the next week, you'll be able to start to utilize variations and versions and be early adopters of the fitting room technology. So check it out. If it's an investment that seems applicable to you, obviously not financial advice, but definitely check it out on the Backers platform. Kirill, really appreciate you joining me here. I know we'll do a couple more Q&As and stuff like that. So those that have questions, I'm going to put a link here for you to kind of sign up for one of our investor Q&As live with Kirill, more of an intimate setting where you can have an opportunity to kind of discuss with Kirill, maybe ask questions. If you have questions on the bottom of this post, wherever you see it on whatever social platform, be sure to ask them, and Kirill will likely jump in, or we can answer maybe on his behalf, although you probably could answer on your own behalf under the post. So yeah, appreciate your time, Kirill. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks so much. All
Awesome.
right.
Everyone else, I will see you again on the I guess this is just Backers Live, used to be called One Take, but we'll see you again on another time.